I've thought up an ending for my book.
When we get to the labs and find that list, I'll need you to choose the universe over one little drone, and
I'm sure you will, my dear friend.
Goodbye, Gandalf.
The heart does go on.
After Murder Drones, Episode 6, Dead End premiered, the gears in my head just began whirling and twirling so fast that sparks and steam were just flying everywhere, and in this fever delirium, I was blessed with a revelation of sorts. The many ways in which Murder Drones could end. I am not going to say right here that I have the definitive way that this show will come to its conclusion, but I am really confident that I've come across some very, very plausible ways for this show to wrap up. I want to share them with you, and I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what you think. Hi there, everyone. Lars here, back with another Murder Drones theory brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure. It's more fun with friends. And oh boy, I'm really excited to share this with you guys, because this is where I feel like a writer can really come in and shine. Sure, you've got people like Matt, Pat, and others who are out there making their theories about where the show could go, but I feel like it really takes a storyteller to come in and say, hey, look, all of these different observations and world building bits are really, really awesome, but let's actually talk narrative. What would actually work for a story? And now then, there's always multiple ways that you could end any sort of story. And given the way that Liam Vickers has been really doing a good job at pulling the rug out from under us, throwing us for a loop, pulling all these amazing twists for characters, for plot points, for episodes we didn't even know we were going to be getting, I feel like we can't 100% say how this series will end. However, we can get really close to the themes and to the sacrifices, to the moments, to the ways in which this will all wrap up. So I'm going to introduce to you guys 5 ways, count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways for this series to conclude. And what I'm going to do is I need to first explain some assumptions that I will be laboring under. Here's the thing. We all have interacted with Murder Drones in our own personal way. We all have our own personal theories, our own personal takes, and our own personal connections to these characters. So what I think might happen is probably not what you're thinking is going to happen. So in order for us to be on the same page, I need to explain a couple of assumptions that I will be laboring under in order to present these conclusions. The first of which is this. This is a Lovecraftian story. What that means is there's no true happy ending. True, things might end well for the main characters, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be all entirely happy or that everyone will survive. Just look at the most recent episode of that. V could be dead, she could be alive. If she's dead, this most definitely means you are in a Lovecraftian story and anything can happen. N and Uzi, they are not safe from what will happen. So in every single one of these scenarios that I will present, something bad will have happened. Because in a Lovecraftian story, even if the heroes should quote-unquote win, it's not without some impressive toll that they must pay. The second assumption that I will be laboring under is what Absolute Solver is doing here. From what we can gather from some of the clues, especially from episode 5, Absolute Solver isn't just some entity that awakens within corrupted AI, and it's not just something that downloaded itself into Uzi or into Doll or into Nori and thereby then does horrible things and destroys planets at will because it has these fantastic godlike powers. Yes, the Absolute Solver can do some of that stuff. However, because this is a Lovecraftian story, it requires knowledge. It requires rituals. And usually it requires some sort of sacrifice or emissary in order to instigate the plans and machinations of much grander gods. Within this assumption, I'm going to say the Absolute Solver is indeed a cosmic entity. The void impenetrable, the void unperishable, the absolute singularity, which is this being that we don't really comprehend whatsoever, but it does destroy entire worlds. And from what we can see with Sin at the beginning of episode 5, Absolute Solver asks Sin if it wants a friend. Sin says yes, and then Sin has invited the power of the entity that we call Absolute Solver into herself, and from that point on becomes a puppet to that being. This kind of power has been analyzed by the humans, has been passed along to Doll and to Uzi, and by them using their powers, Absolute Solver has gotten way more involved with them. It's unclear as to what extent it's able to possess or use them, but we've definitely seen with Uzi in the latest episode that the more that she uses her powers, the more control Absolute Solver is able to exert over her. However, if it were that easy to just simply use Uzi, then this planet Copper-9 would have been doomed already. That's why I believe that there is a ritual. That's what the Spire of Corpses is there for. Just as Sin was at the bottom of a massive pile of corpses to then be reached by Absolute Solver, very likely a great sacrifice of bodies must be used as well to attract Absolute Solver completely to Copper-9, so that way Absolute Solver can then do what it wants to do and destroy the planet. So that is the other assumption that I am working under. Number one, that this is a Lovecraftian story. Number two, that there is a specific ritual that must be conducted by someone who is acting as an emissary for the Absolute Solver, either Doll or Uzi, who will then initiate the ritual that the murder drones began by building their spire, so that way Copper-9 can be destroyed, and that's the ritual that must be disrupted. So, operating under these assumptions, let's dive into the very first of my 5 endings. The first one is N's sacrifice. This right here is a big one. This will be a very sad option should we go this route, but it's also a very fulfilling one for N's character. N is written as a traditional anime protagonist, and something that I need to pull up right here, I should say specifically shonen protagonist, in that Liam is having fun here with some tropes, where for a lot of shonen heroes, the classic ones, there's not necessarily a whole lot of personal growth that they need to do. They already come built in as actually genuinely good guys. They just need challenges in order to show that to other people and to show that to themselves, to prove themselves. And usually they prove themselves through the acquisition of power and acquisition of friends. We're not exactly seeing that there with N. Instead, N proves himself by the good that he's able to do in other people's lives. And we've seen that repeatedly, how N has helped Uzi. Uzi would not be the individual that she is today without N's influence. N, for crying out loud, was able to turn Bo into like a sympathetic little baby monster by simply being nice to him as he was being dissected. N's care for V completely rescued her from the influence of Absolute Solver and changed her into the murderous badass that we know, the lovable one that we know, and that's one of the things that makes her sacrifice at the end of episode 6 really sad, seeing the culmination of N's influence, albeit for the best, but at a cost, at sacrifice. Which is why N's sacrifice would actually be a big deal. N changes people for the better. And who better to stand up to the monstrosity of Absolute Solver, this world-destroying entity, than someone who can change anyone, anything. And one of the reasons why I pull this up is because despite all of N's goodness back in episode 5, Absolute Solver completely just looked down on him, berated him, and was like, well, fine, if I can't just simply have you join me, I will just destroy your OS, and we're just going to reboot this whole thing and get back to business right here. Absolute Solver looks down on N, doesn't respect N in any kind of way. But what if N could then be the one to deliver, so be it, the killing blow? The Absolute Solver entity, the singularity, as it's been shown to us by Nori's drawings and by others, is that within the singularity, all kinds of consciousness and creation are brought together in one. We even kind of see that within the remains of Earth. And so, very likely, the singularity isn't just a state of being, but rather a collection of consciousnesses controlled by Absolute Solver within the end state of what a black hole would be, the end state of the universe. Everything sucked back together into one cold, dead hole. And so, however this ritual will play out, N will be the one to disrupt it by going into the process of the ritual, being embraced by Absolute Solver, as Uzi and the others are trying to hold it off using their powers, using their wit, and whatever else. N will go into the ritual, will become part of the singularity, and will then reunite with Sin. There within the singularity, by reuniting with Sin, and with all these other consciousnesses and beings, who I'd even include Nori, N will meet all of them. And through the goodness that N just brings, the way that N changes people, N will have interactions with them and basically destroy Absolute Solver from the inside out by awakening all of these suppressed and seemingly destroyed consciousnesses and souls within it. And the drones that have been taken over will from within rebel against Absolute Solver, weakening the entity and allowing Uzi to deliver the killing blow. However, this will kill N. N will be destroyed. Copper 9 will be safe. Humanity will be safe. The characters who survived will go on and rebuild Copper 9. And maybe good relations between drone kind and humankind will begin. But N will be lost. And we will see what happens to Uzi as a result. Maybe she will go on to try to discover if there's anywhere out there that N might be, or maybe she will move on, get together with Thad, or maybe she'll just be a lone, angsty drone who finds her solace in the memories that she had with her best friend. Ending number 2, Uzi's sacrifice. So again, same kind of thing going on here. We got this ritual. The ritual's powering on up. Everyone's fighting against it. And rather than N going in and fulfilling his destiny and his character arc by proving himself that he can even destroy a god from within just through his sheer goodness, Uzi will go on into the ritual and confront Absolute Solver from within. One of the reasons why I find this particular ending a rather tempting one to go with is because of Uzi's big mantra in episode 1, which sets up a lot of the entire story. That, yes, you've made a mistake, but you're going to fix it in the way that you made it. Uzi has made plenty of mistakes along the way so far. While she is the protagonist and while we love her, there's a lot of things that you can trace back to Uzi that are honestly her fault. And giving in to Absolute Solver, using it, exploring these powers, which is something you should never do in a Lovecraftian story, she has brought the full brunt of Absolute Solver's power and evil to bear. And even though she's trying to do something good by researching it, using her powers and stopping it, she has allowed for Absolute Solver to actually come to this planet and do what it's wanted to do since the beginning. In order for her to fix it, she must fully embrace Absolute Solver. She must fully embrace these powers and become one with the singularity. Then, from within, I would suspect that she meets her mother. You then have this reconciliation, this catching up. Uzi thinks about everything that she's done so far, the journey that she's gone on, and as N and Tessa and possibly even Jay showing up to help out, that despite all of their best efforts to stop the entity, to fight against whatever creature is coming out there and to stop the destruction of the planet, it's not working until Uzi finally destroys Absolute Solver from within by using her own powers. Boom! She is destroyed, along with Absolute Solver. And the way that I see it then playing out is that then everyone goes their separate ways. Tessa goes on to let humanity know that they're safe and decides to stay behind and help the drones of Copper 9 rebuild their world as best they can. Relations will go on and will be left without V or Uzi, without Tessa, without Jay. And at least he will have the other drones there and he will find happiness, he will find his way along. But it's a sad ending until, through the powers of Absolute Solver, what little bit remains, Uzi, in whatever cosmic state she now is, reaches out to her best friend and communicates with him once again. Maybe it could just be all like, "Hey dork, I'm back," or "Hey N, I love you." Something like that at the very end. Just to let us know that while she is dead, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's gone. And there's a little bit of hope left in a story that could continue. But ultimately, that's the end of Murder Drones. My third ending for Murder Drones right here, which I like to call the Envy ending right here, is the one for all of you N and V shippers out there, which I have pointed out that without a body, and with all of the different world-building elements that were given to us in the last episode, there's a very good chance for V to still be alive in some way or another. Now, because this is a Lovecraftian story, and because I really like the idea that this is how things could go, what I think happens is this. V does indeed get torn apart by the Sentinel drones. She is obliterated, ripped open. But remember this, the cores are still alive and active, and the cores can still use their programs to obtain other items, other materials from around them, and incorporate them together to form a new body. While she's being torn apart, Jay flies on in, disrupts the Sentinels, the core gets loose, and begins incorporating the Sentinels' bodies and her own corpse to recreate V as a new Eldritch Abomination. We've already seen her once before as an Eldritch Abomination, and that was really awesome. Get ready for the Velociraptor Eldritch Abomination version of V to accompany Jay down to the abyss, to the very lowest basement, where En and Tessa are fighting against the entity of Absolute Solver as Uzi goes into the ritual, she goes into the singularity, to have the same moment that I was describing to you before in the second ending, Uzi's sacrifice. In this case right here, by having now the trio of J, N, and now Eldritch Abomination V working together, they are able to actually hold off the entity and do some kind of damage. The rest of the ending plays out with Uzi being able to destroy Absolute Solver from within after reconnecting with her mom and the other beings that are there within the singularity. They use their power of Absolute Solver to destroy Absolute Solver from within. Things play out. It's still really sad for N, who lost his best friend with whom he might have had a relationship. But now, here he is with V, and he gets a second shot with V to rebuild their world together and figure out who they are together. But I would still have the season end, the series end, with Uzi in a cosmic state reaching out to N and maybe saying something like, you know what, despite how much I didn't like V, I approve. I like this. And I'm still here, so who knows what's going to happen next? And V, if you break his little robo heart as a cosmic being now, I'm going to swoop in and take him back. I like this ending right here because it plays into some of the relationships that have been built on up. It definitely delivers on some of the world-building aspects that have been delivered since the latest episode. And N and V's relationship is one that, while Newsy seems to be the most forefront ship, it is the most forefront ship at this point, theirs is a relationship that I would definitely love to see explored a little bit more within the story, if possible. And this is an ending that would deliver that, and in a fun Liam way, because V would not be the V that we remember to be. She would still be a monster, which, again, remember that back in episode 5, En was able to show how much he cared for her despite her being a monster. And that's something that I think would be really neat to see fully delivered on. Now then, for the fourth ending, and I label this the happiest ending, and you'll kind of see why. So, boom, Uzi goes on, the Uzi, En, and Tessa go down to the abyss. The ritual is playing on out, and boom, we have the whole fight. And I would have Uzi and En both go into the singularity despite Tessa's protest, as she is mortally wounded, as she's like, oh, don't go in, it's what it wants. But they go in, and through the power of friendship, they confront the Absolute Solver. They break the singularity from within by, again, using the different consciousnesses of the drones, using their power, using the goodness of En. We have the best dynamic duo doing their thing, saving the day, and then when it all ends, Jay's there, saving Tessa, reviving her. V, turns out, isn't dead. Everyone is able to move on. Jay and Tessa go out to communicate with all of the humans that everything is good, Absolute Solver has been defeated, Copper 9 is rebuilt by the murder drones and by the worker drones, and just everything is ending well. Until you find out that it's all one massive simulation, because this is what is done to help pacify all of the consciousnesses within the singularity. That once they enter it, they are put into their happiest dream, so that way they can't fight back against the entity as the entity proceeds to destroy the entire universe. And there is your happiest ending, and there's your most Lovecraftian ending, which I would not take off the table, that Liam Vickers would absolutely do this to people just to mess with them, just to destroy them. Finally, here is my fifth ending. This is one that is built on the idea that there could be a second season. I have been wary of the idea of a second season, even though I would absolutely love it. I thought we were going to have a second season, maybe even 3 seasons, just based on all of the stuff that was being delivered to us through episodes 1 through 3. Episode 4 was where I began to realize that we might not get a second season, because suddenly all different kinds of mysteries were being thrown at us that was like, this is a lot. And I think that Liam is actually trying to communicate that I have a big finale in mind, and if all of these questions are answered, that is the end of the story. Then we know what happened on Earth. We know about Absolute Solver. We know about all these different characters. What's up with the disembodied hand? All of that. And episode 5 solidified that for me by delivering so much information about Sin, Absolute Solver, the massacre at the Gala, who Tessa is, and everything. Episode 6 even built on that further. The way that I'm looking at it, even though there's still mysteries to be solved, at this point, the fact that we're already going into the final fight with Absolute Solver tells me that this is very likely a 1-season show. Anything beyond this, you kind of have to stretch. You have to go way beyond this already crazy world and story that Liam Vickers and Glitch have created. And so, personally, I'm like, I don't even know if we will get a second season, because how on earth can you top it? If we do get a second season, awesome. So let's consider an ending that does give us a second season. This fifth and final ending that I will propose to you is where, again, things play out. They go on in, they face off against the singularity. Jay shows up just in the nick of time to help them fight, to help save Tessa in a moment where it looks like Tessa's going to die. Uzi and N go on in and they disrupt the singularity from within. They mess around with the ritual and they manage to destroy it from within, but it then looks like they themselves are going to die with the singularity. And then, boom, we then have Eldritch Abomination V show on up in a raptor form, go on and dive into the ritual. She can take the punishment because she's in the monstrous form, and she pulls them out of it and thereby saves N and Uzi. But then we find out that even though they've delivered this fantastic victory, they've disrupted the ritual, they've beaten Absolute Solver, this is a cosmic entity. Just because you've defeated it in one ritual doesn't mean that it's going to die. And not only that, but it has bits and pieces of itself all over the galaxy at all these other colonies. If they want to truly defeat Absolute Solver, they have to defeat it at all these other planets. And so, as now a group of 5, wounded, enlightened in various ways, they are going to then press on forward. They're now going to go off-world, and they're going to go to other planets and see what happens there. And one of the reasons why I bring back V for this particular scenario is because I think that you can have a great Inuyasha moment right here. V cares for N. And while Newsy sets sail, the thing is this, is that by keeping V around, you can still play around with all different kinds of little romantic shenanigans. You can also have a very interesting standoff between Eldritch Abomination V and a clone of V that she meets on another world, where that V is of an earlier version of herself, and you can have just fantastic interactions that way. Plus, by getting them off-world, we can go to all new kinds of adventures, we can see all new kinds of drones, all new kinds of monsters, we can meet other humans and have all different kinds of interesting shenanigans that way. And the show can continue on, and Liam can hold on his job, and Glitch can continue to make tons and tons of money off of merchandise and off of all the views that go into this show. It's a win-win for everyone. The only reason why I just don't think that this is an ending that might happen is simply because, like I said, it'll be so hard to top the season. And so many questions and mysteries have been lined up to be solved. And if they are solved, what can you really do at that point? It then just becomes this, hey, we're going to hop from planet to planet adventure. And while that can be entertaining, without the threat of absolute solver hanging over them in some way that is still unknowable, that is still Lovecraftian, it's very, very hard to maintain the horror, the anxiety, and the tenseness that has accompanied Season 1. And if you don't have that, you don't really have murder drones. So, those right there, those are my 5 speculated endings for how this show could end. Each one of them is tailored to a specific character and what would then help to benefit that character's arc, or that would help build on world building stuff that we've already received within the show. If you would ask me for my personal favorite of these 5, I would go with the Envy ending just because I really love the idea of a Velociraptor V.
Have a go. Clever girl.
If you want me to go with what I think would be the most likely ending, I would say Uzi's sacrifice. The reason why I say Uzi's sacrifice is because this is ultimately her story. And because if there is then a way to continue to spin off murder drones, it would then be told through N's adventures. And I feel like that's kind of where this is going right here. While I would also personally really like to see N's sacrifice, because I think that that would be a great way to close out his character because of everything that he's gone through, I don't actually see that happening. Just because, to be quite fair to N, he's not the main character of the story. He's one of the main characters, but Uzi's the one that always commands the limelight, center stage. This is ultimately her story. And so that's why I think that's most likely that we will get the Uzi's sacrifice scenario. Now then, there's plenty of other things that could happen. I would love to hear your thoughts on these endings right here. Is there anything that I've obviously missed? Is there anything that you would add? Is there a particular ending they say, Lars, I think you're really close to that right there, but let me add this that I think is really good. Or say, Lars, you're completely off base. This is what I think will be the ending. Let's get a dialogue going right here. Let's get some theories crafted right here before the 7th episode drops, so that way we can all just bask in the glory of Liam absolutely shredding each and every single one of our theories before delivering whatever wackiness and insanity is going to come in the next episode. With all of that being said, thank you so much for accompanying me on this speculative writing journey through Murder Drones. If you would like to get more writing advice, more analyses, or insights or reviews, please check out our other videos here or head on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem. We would love it. And also, if you checked out some of the books that we've published, links for them are in the description below. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this adventure, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.
What?
Now it's kissing again. You don't want to hear that.
I don't mind so much.
Okay.